So I guess we will get started. George, Brad, good to go?
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you
good.
so much, Cindy.
No problem. If we get some last minute stragglers, no problem. But it's my pleasure to introduce this awesome breakout session. And this session is going to look at the steps that companies can take to overcome common MarTech obstacles and realize the benefits of a modern customer experience, the CX stack. And here to tell us more is Munvo's Brad Penwarden and ActionIQ's George Phipps. So happy to have you guys, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And I just want to confirm that you can see my screen that I'm sharing this title slide. Awesome. Hey, everyone, and welcome to our session, as Cindy was saying, on migrating from legacy campaign tools. I'm George Phipps. I'm Director of Product Marketing at ActionIQ, where I'm working closely with engineers and designers and marketers to design and enhance technologies that improve organizational access to customer data. Really excited today to be joined by Brad Penwarden from our partners at Munvo.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Nice to meet you. So thanks for the opportunity to break up the dress code and wear a collared shirt today. And I'm a Director of Products here at Munvo. So I've worked with a lot of marketing automation companies in North America and Europe, and really helping clients utilize, migrate, and organize themselves around how to optimize their investment in these campaign management, marketing automation tools. And so I'm glad to be able to speak with you today.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And we have sort of a short 20-minute session today to cover what, as many of you on the line might know, and Brad, you certainly know, can be a very deep topic about how brands who are using legacy campaign tools can migrate to sort of a more modern approach to customer experience management. But to get us started, Brad, I want to hand it over to you, since you are knee deep in technologies and stack management and implementation over at Munvo, and you can give us a bit of background on what these tools are.
Yeah, great. So it might be worthwhile to start and just help everyone understand when we talk about legacy campaign tools, what are we talking about? So I've got an infographic here from Chief MarTech, if anyone's familiar with that website. But obviously it's 325 plus products in this space. It's quite deep. There's quite a broad set of products in here. And I'm speaking specifically around tools that are really in the enterprise space, and they're really focused about helping you understand who, so through segmentation of your data, what message we're going to contact someone with. So I think about offer management and personalization, and even the when and how, and that comes down to things like you might have heard contact history or contact tracking and response tracking. So these tools are to help you kind of automate this kind of process of segmenting in a marketing friendly way, and helping you identify and store these details over time. If I think of some specific vendors that might help you understand if this is for you, I'm thinking of companies like Acoustic, HCL's Unica, formerly IBM's Unica, the Epiphany Marketing Suite, Siebel Marketing, SaaS's Marketing Automation Suite, Adobe Campaign, Marketo. Pega has some marketing enterprise tools as well, Eloqua. And these are just some of the players. Obviously, it's a very broad space, but these are just some of the players who kind of fit into the space, so that might speak to you. And so I wanted to start by just talking about what kicked off, the acceleration of these tools, what was kind of the rise and fall of these tools. And fall might be a bit extreme, but, really, I think the tipping point was the promise of like a marketing driven automation, right? To allow marketers to kind of automate and deliver push messaging through outbound or SMS or direct mail. And they rose in expectation through the promise of offering cross-channel coordination. The idea that whatever my message is, it'll deliver on the right channel to the right person at the right time. But obviously this kind of fell into a trough because this comes with a lot of data complexity. And for a lot of our clients, what this means is you need to find a way to identify and synthesize a lot of data. And it becomes quite challenging for a lot of our partners to really build that foundation. If I think of marketing automation as a house, ultimately your foundation is your underlying data. So you have to be able to bring a lot of sources together. And a good example here that probably a lot of you might have worked with is, think of something like if you have an e-commerce store and an abandoned cart event, right? Typically you have to coordinate with partners on the website, and you have to start streaming in some weblog data. Then you have to filter through that weblog data and identify the people who have done that cart abandonment and how to target them. And that's just one use case. So it is challenging, and bringing in new and additional use cases requires a lot of IT support to kind of get there. And finally, a lot of clients have realized this is difficult, and that data foundation is everything. So they've entered into, I'd say, a pretty stable plateau of productivity, which is they're using these tools for cross-channel delivery. They've seen that they can do these things well, but without that data complexity, there's just certain limits that these clients are able to hit without a lot of time spent in building that foundation underneath the hood. So as it settles, a lot of these clients are still trying to move towards this cross-channel orchestration, and it's not easy. And you're hearing a lot of words today around customer journeys and things of that nature. And George will speak a bit more about how that comes into play.
Yeah, it's a great call out. And, I think since the rise of those tools and maybe the plateau of those tools, and especially over the last decade, Brad, we've all seen kind of the evolution of consumer expectations, where, marketing used to happen maybe over a select couple of channels, and email, direct mail, whatever. And today, marketing and customer experience are kind of one and the same. And they have to happen across the customer lifecycle, and usually across dozens of channels that span the customer journey. And a lot of things have contributed to this, which isn't the topic of today's session. But obviously there is an explosion of channels over the last 10 years. There are new sort of disruptive brands that are really dedicated to these kind of digital first, customer first experiences. It's kind of the backbone of their business model. And those sorts of things are driving consumer expectations kind of sky high. And ultimately, what this shift is making the new battleground for enterprise brands, delivering on these kinds of omni-channel expectations. And it's a battle because consumer expectations continue to evolve. It's also a battle because as often as your competitors are gaining ground in sort of delivering this continuous journey, that's potentially taking customers away from you. And sort of the challenge that I hope we haven't telegraphed too obviously here is that, from an organizational point of view, a lot of enterprises are still in an operating model that, generally manages customer experience in terms of maybe marketing, sales, and post-sales or service. And each of those sort of chunks of the customer experience have different teams and tools and processes and data that are associated with them. And so, legacy campaign tools are a great example of one of these tools that is kind of endemic to these operating models. As we're demonstrating here in this little graphic, they're capable of delivering a solid experience on a couple of channels, especially on the early portion of the customer journey. But ultimately, it's really for marketing and for limited touch points, and there's no real opportunity to impact a more modern customer journey and orchestrate the kinds of experiences that we know customers are out for these days. And the reason that these tools can't power that kind of approach really comes down to their capabilities. If you raise your hand to join this breakout and attend this session, I might not have to go into a ton of detail about what those limitations are, but they can be very rigid with data, as Brad was suggesting. Relying on manual pulls of pre-aggregated data by kind of expensive IT resources, and it's a very time-intensive process. And there's no ability for marketing users or business users to go in and self-serve those insights for campaigns. They can also struggle with large quantities of data, especially when you're thinking of, Brad, again, as you were saying, web data, digital data, and the volume and complexity of that and what it takes to integrate that seamlessly into campaigns. And then they have, limited or no ability to, extend a marketing campaign into, let's say, a service channel or a sales channel, or even just to extend it, kind of seamlessly from email to paid media based on, a customer response or a lack of a customer response. Often these tools are really just competent with a few touch points, and they're not really omni-channel in the sense of being channel agnostic. And so ultimately, what that means from an impact perspective is, high costs and wasted resources due to that high reliance on IT, on the data piece. Long campaign cycles that stifle your ability to innovate, rapidly test and fail, and kind of grow your campaign strategy based off of that. And then, low LTV and higher churn. That's really consistent with low personalization and low relevance in communications, especially because you're lacking the most detailed data and the latest data to drive that contextual engagement. But I think a lot of enterprises experience this, Brad, and even enterprises who know about these kinds of limitations aren't just pulling some technology off the shelf and solving their problem. So maybe you can go into sort of some of the considerations and the nuances of migrating off of these kinds of tools that you've seen in your experience that are important to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about, should you migrate, there's probably two sides you need to consider to start. Is one, if you look on the left here, when I think of what companies are looking for when they're talking about marketing automation and what their goals are, it's around improving your productivity, increasing your ROI and your marketing spend, and really just having a better campaign management, process. And so one, are you reaching these goals? If you are reaching these goals, then maybe you are having some success. So there's not, a total reason to just throw away what you've built and been investing in all these years. If you were to, speak to someone higher up in the organization and say, I want to throw this out and replace it with something else, the first question would be like, well, we are having these gains and you have to justify this ROI. That's not an easy thing to do. And it's hard to say that just replacing with a new tool is going to do that. But the second piece to consider is, the limitations, the challenges that people are facing with marketing automation. And, you'll see they're around, fully utilizing the tool, integrating new data sources, and really providing a better customer experience. When I think of customer experience here, I'm thinking of, applying journeys, understanding customer behavior, and moving away from that mindset of, I'm going to push marketing at you to, I'm going to understand what you're doing and try to figure out what's best for you, right? And really get to that personalization, journey kind of concept. So it's an important distinction to understand these two worlds and understand what is the right decision. So there is an opportunity that maybe if you are having success, that considering how you can augment this, and this is where, integration of new systems and new technologies can come into play. And, when I think of a player like, ActionIQ, it can really come in as to augment your data platform. You think today you have a data mart that's really about a static customer profile. Moving it requires a lot of work and a lot of effort, but you can augment that with some more marketing enabled data sources. And that's really what I think, I've been in this industry for over a decade now. And if I were to sum up what the industry is looking for, it's marketing enablement. The marketers want to have more control over what they're doing and less reliance on IT resources where possible. And this can help you get there. If we go into how does a migration occur successfully, there's really, in my experience, a lot of companies try for the big bang, but it's fraught with a lot of risk. And if you can avoid it, you should, right? Clients who do that usually have some push that's kind of forcing them in this direction. But if you are able to, let's talk about a way to do it in a more phased approach. So I think of sort of 3 phases, and obviously this is a simplification in terms of timelines and your context will vary, but ultimately it's about 3 steps. The first step is around, let's build the new use cases and do the things that we were not able to do before in our new tools. And the goal there is to really drive some ROI and get a win. And the win is to help you justify to, people up the chain to continue funding this activity and keep, promoting this campaign, this project into the next phases. But ultimately for your team, for the actual users, it lets you learn the new capabilities. When I think of people who do a migration quickly to a new system, they often rebuild what they had in a new system, even if it doesn't really make any sense. There's such a goal to just keep things the same and move things in a new system, even when it may not be the best use case, or even it's just, we have to replicate. Once you've moved to this phase and you have some wins and you have some understanding of the tool, you can look to now optimize what you already have. So bringing in the existing use cases and seeing, is there a way to bring our new capabilities to improve them? Is there a way to integrate with our existing system, i.e. a new data source, and really cement your learnings to know what is it that this tool brings that we didn't have before? What is the real value of this new tool? And then finally, as you move along, you may find here where it comes time to, okay, we're ready. We think it's time to fully transition in. Maybe we don't actually need to move everything that we had before. Many times in a migration, you'll see clients review what they were going to bring in initially. And if they go through a phase, they might realize we don't really want to do it that way anymore. There's a lot of things here that are probably done in a way that's no longer optimal, or it was just sort of us building it in the system we had. Let's consider how we want to do this. And then for your team, it's really about moving to this phase where you own the system, you're supporting the system, and you're the internal champions. So, it's very important to kind of bring that along and build that learning and give you a chance to sort of, start with something fresh. And I think George has a good view here to show you kind of how ActionIQ views this whole data layer.
Yeah. And so, Brad, you're saying this doesn't happen in 1 week?
No, not 1 week. No promises there.
Yeah. So the path a lot of enterprises will take, when they're migrating off of a legacy campaign tool, is a smart hub approach, which is powered by a customer data platform. And at ActionIQ, we believe and our clients believe that until they address those sort of systemic issues around inaccessibility of data, high data latency, lack of being able to bring in all of your data sources, that they were never going to achieve what they may have actually thought they would achieve with a campaign tool. Automation, real-time, omni-channel, extensibility and campaign orchestration, that kind of stuff. So what I want to call out in this diagram is that, a smart hub CDP like ActionIQ can introduce those capabilities in your stack with your existing sort of infrastructural investments and your endpoints as well. So it sits in between systems that we see here on the left, for data management, which are, typically in the domain of your IT and your technical teams, and then systems on the right, where, business teams and teams responsible for customer experiences across marketing, sales, servicing, ads, are understanding customer behavior and then delivering experiences to engage with them at various touch points. Any platform serving this role really needs some critical capabilities to do this effectively and to bridge this gap. And that's things like offline and online data ingest, identity resolution, especially machine learning driven identity resolution, audience segmentation that, as you were saying, Brad, is sort of focused on marketer enablement or enabling the business user to be able to self-serve those insights. And then activation through, a variety of tools from an orchestration perspective. So real-time experiences, real-time triggers, planned batch campaigns, or even, highly contextual customer journeys that can be orchestrated to deliver a consistent customer experience or continually shape customer behavior. And that's, what a lot of large enterprises across industries, from technology to media, department stores, fashion retailers have come to ActionIQ in search of, and that's sort of that best of breed approach. And they've done this after spending years, as Brad mentioned, having a level of productivity on campaign tools, but not being able to drive new strategic initiatives that are, really emerging with the evolving consumer behavior that we were looking at earlier in this presentation, and evolving markets, evolving competitors, and just general digital disruption. And those kinds of initiatives, they all require faster access to data, broader access to data, and the ability for teams who can impact the customer experience to take that data and orchestrate engagement and sort of make a difference in the customer experience. So a lot of our clients have offboarded their legacy campaign tool, or they use it for select functionalities as more of an endpoint system, and they're migrating their data and their decisioning and their orchestration workflows into that central location, into ActionIQ. In pulling this content together, I discovered that of our clients who migrated off of one another legacy campaign tool, they all measured a very similar KPI around campaign productivity improvement. And that's basically, looking at from campaign ideation to planning and execution. That whole process used to take 30 or more days for many of our clients. And now they measure that as happening within 10 days. And that's just cutting out a lot of that process around the sort of data wrangling, the list building, validating requirements, validating audiences that you can eliminate through this approach. And they can reinvest that time in other activities. So, they could just run 3 campaigns in the time that it took to run one, or they can explore additional channels to add to, existing campaigns that they already know works well for them today. They can evaluate, where do predictive segments fit into our campaign strategy, and what kind of value could that bring to our campaigns. And those are just a few examples of some of the things that our clients have been able to focus on by sort of moving on from that plateau of productivity of a campaign tool. We also have examples of here with a mass media publisher. They actually completed their migration a full year ahead of schedule, which was 6 figures of cost savings for them. And then on top of that, when they did centralize their data and decisioning within a Smart Hub CDP, they were able to sunset their expensive ESP that they've been using for some of those workflows and for data storage, and then migrate to a smaller delivery-focused email service provider. So there's just some of the different ways that this can drive value for enterprises. You don't have to take my word for it. The total economic impact report that Forrester conducted for ActionIQ measured these same results. So for one, just context on this, I pulled the numbers for the first year of using ActionIQ just to show how quickly a migration of this scale, even something this complicated can happen and how quickly it can bear fruit. So I'll call out the first number, $635,000. That was savings from the first year of replacing the legacy solution. That's inclusive of the license of that solution, the teams that were required to manage it sort of operationally and feed it with the data that it needs to be effective, and sort of eliminating a lot of those inefficient processes. And I won't go through everything else in detail, but they're able to run more campaigns, more personalized campaigns. And with more efficiency means significant savings, from a productivity perspective. And we can definitely follow up with this report to our attendees, and you'll be able to see this is all risk adjusted, and we're not looking even at year 2 or year 3 here, where obviously the benefit increases non-linearly because our clients are able to make additional investments into the platform, and their use cases are able to mature. That's it for most of our content. So I'm happy to take questions at this point. And also, I guess while we wait for a couple to come in, I haven't been able to check, but I'm also going to play this quick video from our founder at ActionIQ.
Everything flows is one of the fundamental concepts in ancient Greek philosophy. It's based on the observation that the ancient Greeks had that nothing ever remains the same. If you look at the sea one time and you look at it again, it's completely different. And if you map this down to marketing, what does everything flows means for data-driven marketing? It used to be that things would change on an annual basis or even slower. Now things are changing on a weekly basis. So having a very static definition of a customer profile, that is state-of-the-art in marketing technology right now. And that in our mind is very limited because when everything flows, new questions about the customers emerge on a daily basis. So ActionIQ took a completely different approach to the problem. We asked ourselves the question, what if there was no customer profile? What if we always had access to all the raw data, and anytime we wanted any new information about the customer, we could create it on the fly? By having no predefined customer profiles, you can end up with a lot richer and much more real-time, much more immediate information about these customers. We want to be able to enable this culture and organizations to come up with this rapid innovation, which comes through rapid failure, as well as small failures that are cheap, that allow you to quickly find what works without wasting too much time and resources. That is the answer for creating success in an era where everything flows.
All right. So we did get one question that came in from Lalitha about the semantics, or can you talk about the semantics you've built to make sense of the data from multiple sources? That's a great question that from an ActionIQ perspective, you probably want a very detailed answer on, but I can tell you that our philosophy is, as you just saw with Tas's video, is to be able to bring in all of your data effectively raw and unformatted, and then only apply definitions on top of that data once you're activating it, so that you always have sort of that raw store of data within the platform, and you're not pre-aggregating it and defining it before it comes into the platform and then working with a very static notion of a different variable, as Brad was saying, for abandoned browse and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then just to add on to your question or your comment there, George, is, that's what people often refer to as schema on read, you might call that, which is really about, get the data to a destination and let the reader infer at some level what that meaning is. And you'll see different approaches in data warehousing, but get the data together first and then try to infer what you can get from it later.
Okay, great. Well, I'm sure we have a lot more questions. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please be sure to visit the ActionIQ Zoom room. If you have more questions, stop in there, they can help you. This session will be recorded and also available on the on-demand, the MMA on-demand learning library. So thank you all. Head back into the main room. We'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thanks everyone for your time. Thanks for your time.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care.